Welcome to the Castle of Spirits podcast, the companion to castleofspirits.com, the long-running true paranormal story website. This is episode 9, and I am your ghost keeper, Jane.
And I'm your ghost keeper, Vince.
That's right. And today we're going to tell you some stories.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I was talking to the audience, not you. We got some spooky stories to share this week, no?
We do. And we have an announcement.
Oh, no.
But I want to make sure that you guys stay listening. So in that sneaky way that podcasters do, we're going to put the important stuff that we really want you to hear at the very end. So you have to listen to the whole episode to get to it. Or I guess you could fast forward.
Well, but I don't even know what it is that you're going to say.
Yes, you do. You know.
What is it? Tell me. Just don't tell them, though. Whisper it to me.
Will you edit it out?
No.
Oh, nope. Then I'm not going to.
All right. So, but you're making a major announcement about the show?
I don't know if I would say it's a major announcement, but yeah.
All right. So maybe I should know what it is.
You know what it is. You just can't think of it right now. If I tell you, you'll be like, oh, yeah.
I give you permission to tell them before you tell me.
Thanks, Gareth. I guess we actually have 2 announcements about the podcast today. The other one, I can go ahead and let out of the bag, that we have started a bonus episode each week. So on the Castle of Spirits website, there is in the menu, the lounge, or you can go to castleofspirits.com/lounge. And in the lounge, you can submit to us anything about an episode. It doesn't have to be about the current episode. It can be any episode at all. You know, questions, more information, comments. If you have similar experiences to something we talked about in the episode, you can go ahead and submit that to us there. And we will be reading those on the lounge episodes that will air on Friday. It's just basically casual conversation. This is a way that we can include you guys into our conversations. I am hoping, Vince, that very soon we can find a way our audience can call and leave us quick little recorded messages that we can play in the lounge episodes as well. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, so if you're out there and you're interested in something like that, you think it would be a good idea, let us know.
Mm-hmm. So they came here today, though, Vince, for true paranormal stories.
And who are we to turn them away?
That's true.
Especially in this castle with 4,600 plus stories. So, Jane?
Yes?
Do you have a scary story to tell us?
I do.
And is it a true story?
It is a true story. And it's one of the news stories for October of 2022. So it's a brand new story.
Reader submitted story.
Yep. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. The Watcher. Submitted by Rain, October 2022. When I was a child, we moved into an old house in St. Paul, Minnesota. It had a skeleton key for all the doors in the house, which I thought was cool, and an old clawfoot tub in the bathroom. Once we got settled in, so did the unsettling feeling that something was not right in the house. I began to hear someone or something whispering my name.
Rain.
Sometimes it was loud, and I would assume it was my mother calling me, and I would call back to her only for her to say that she had not called my name. I thought maybe it was the stress of moving to a new neighborhood and having to attend a different school, and tried to shrug it off, until the night I realized it was not stress, but something else entirely. Something that would haunt me for the rest of my life, though thankfully only in the form of memories. One night, I awakened in the middle of the night. I was sleeping in the top bunk. My bedroom door was open and faced my mother's bedroom. I looked at the foot of her bed and screamed in horror at what I saw. It was the shape of a man, but completely white and transparent. The man had almost a strange glow against the dark of the room, but the most terrifying feature was the black holes for eyes, completely dark and empty, just staring and watching silently from across the room. This encounter happened many times again to me and my little sister, always the same, never interacting, just watching. Finally, we ended up moving from that house, but that house and the experiences in it have stayed with me, fueling my obsession with the paranormal and looking for answers to who or what was in that house. Thank you again to Rain for submitting that in October of 2022. So, I don't know about you, Vince, but the idea of the big black holes for eyes, that's terrifying to me. I don't want to see that.
Well, the eyes are the windows to the soul, right?
Right, but
and
also...
if you're looking at a disembodied entity that has no eyes, I guess you...
But aren't you looking at its soul?
Well, you come to the conclusion that it's a soulless soul, which is what? What does that mean?
Meta and confusing. But also, I think maybe I don't like it because of the whole Nietzsche quote about, when you stare into the abyss stares back into you. And those holes in the eyes, it's kind of like, like an abyss.
What I love about that story is that it totally reminds me of that movie, The Haunted, with Sally Kirkland, the TV movie from the early to mid 90s, was it?
The one about the Smurls?
Yeah.
What? There was something like that in...
Well, only the scariest scene in the whole movie where Sally Kirkland is downstairs doing...
Oh, yeah, because of
laundry
the
and
voice. I was thinking about the ghost. Anyway, go ahead.
The voice that calls her name.
Yeah.
It's the voice of her mother-in-law. And it's an absolutely terrifying scene. Probably one of the scariest movie scenes I've ever seen.
It's really creepy.
Especially on a TV movie. Remember, this is back in the 90s when TV movies, anything that was made for television was bad. That was not in the 90s. Yeah, it was 1991.
All right, you were right. It just seems so old. That's a really terrifying story. That's the only book that I can remember reading in my adult life anyway. I'm sure it happened when I was a kid. I remember reading The Haunted, sitting on the couch in the middle of summer. It's a bright, sunny day. I had the door open. It's like the least creepy thing ever, right? I'm just sitting on my couch at home reading this book, and it was so scary. I was home alone. I had to put the book down and leave the house. I was like, nope. And
I've actually had an experience like that myself. This was back in, I think, let's just say a long time ago. And I was living in my first apartment, and I was alone, and it was about midnight. I was reading two books at the time. One of them was The Demonologists by Ed and Lorraine Warren. And the other one was called, I don't remember the name of the book. It had some generic title like Haunted Houses or something like that. And I don't remember what I was reading exactly. I just remember that I felt so alone and so afraid as I was reading it, that it was that sort of fear. It almost brings you to tears.
Yeah.
You're just reading something and it makes you so terrified. I mean, I was 18 years old. It wasn't like I was 9 or something, Yet this book scared me so bad that I had to put it down because I was freaking myself out.
Yeah. So the part in The Haunted, the movie that you're talking about.
Before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a question. I wanted to say, okay, for people who are listening who don't know what the Smurls are, give us a little backstory.
So Jack
about that.
and Janet Smurl and their 3 daughters?
And their multitudinous children.
Yeah. So Jack and Janet Smurl and their daughters, they buy a duplex, and they live on one half of the duplex, and Jack's parents live on the other half. It's this one house, the whole family is living in this house.
And this was sometime back in the the early 70s?
70s. It might have been 80s, yeah. So standard haunting stuff, things start moving, things start disappearing. There's the stain on the wall that they can't paint over. And if you ask me, that's just somebody not understanding what an oil-based stain or oil-based paint, how that reacts when you try and put latex paint over it. Because if you have an oily stain on a wall and you put paint over it, you can paint over 1,000,000 times and that stain will come through. That's just the way that works. But anyway.
Okay, so I didn't know this. So
yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying, in all haunted houses, it's like, there was a stain on the wall that we couldn't paint over. Yeah, there was a stain on the wall in my house that I couldn't paint over either. I don't know what it was. It was in the kitchen, so it was some kind of oily, I had to, clean it and prime it and everything. Anyway, though, so the Smurls, all of this haunting stuff starts happening, and then, of course, it turns into demons, and, there's a terrifying a minotaur or a centaur or something. I can't remember which in the book. That sounds really cheesy when I say it, but it was terrifying.
Isn't it that Jack Smurl is like going to the bathroom and he turns around, looks over his shoulder and sees this big giant minotaur chasing him down the hallway.
Yeah, and then it's running on the wall. And yeah, the reason that Vince brought it up in the context of my story is there's this terrifying scene in the movie where Janet is doing laundry.
In the basement.
Was she already in the... Yeah, she was doing laundry in the basement, and she heard her mother-in-law upstairs yell, "Janet!" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm down here." No response. And she hears it again, and so she goes upstairs, and she's like, "Mom, I'm right here. Where are you?" And all of a sudden, behind her in the basement, you hear, "Janet." And it was creepy. And so Vince and I still to this day try to creep each other out at, inopportune moments. One of us will just kind of creepily go, "Janet."
It's always Janet. It'll always be Janet.
It will always be Janet.
Janet is the most terrifying name. No, it's just the...
if you want somebody to be haunted, name them Janet.
Oh, that's terrible. Sorry, just Janet,
kidding.
If you're listening.
Yeah.
And alas, that brings me to confess one of my deepest, darkest fears.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear.
And that is the phenomenon of the disembodied voice.
Mm-hmm.
Voices are straight creepy.
Mm-hmm.
They're creepy even if you're looking at somebody and they're talking to you. I mean, forget about it. But if they come through a crackly old phone,
mm-hmm.
If you're hearing voices in your pillow or voices down the hall calling your name, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, a voice that's coming from where it shouldn't come from. Yeah.
And what's troubling about things like that is, I guess you could explain it by saying that it was an auditory hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing.
Yeah. Like exploding head syndrome, which sounds really horrifying, but it's really not.
The exploding head syndrome is that sound that you hear sometimes where you're falling asleep.
And suddenly there's an explosion, or you hear a bang or a loud pop, and it startles you and you wake up, but you didn't actually hear anything. It was a sound in your head. That's exploding head syndrome.
It was all in your head. And it could have all been in Janet Smurl's head. Of course, that's discounting all of the other experiences they
right.
had.
I mean, it seems if that one thing is going to be in your head, you can't automatically say, well, then that means that everything else that this family has experienced for years, that's all been in their head because this one thing was, or,
Didn't the Smurls, though, didn't they invite over a team of paranormal researchers?
Yeah, the Warrens.
While they were there, the Warrens came. Oh, yeah, the Warrens were in that movie.
Uh-huh.
But wasn't it, setting the Warrens aside, because for as much respect as I have for the Warrens, for their body of work and for doing all that sort of thing and really making names for themselves in the paranormal world, I don't know that I'm not convinced that, I'm not going to call them kooks, but I don't know that I'm not convinced they were always on the up and up, or that they were always seeking rational explanations.
Well, I mean, without sending the conversation down another rabbit hole, we can put a pin in this and come back to it. But you got to wonder about their credibility when the discussion turns to the Amityville Horror. But we're putting a pin in that one for later.
Oh, the Amityville Horror is one of my favorite topics.
Yes. So I think the author of The Haunted, Robert Curran, I think he was an investigator that was there. I think he was one of them.
But to my recollection in the movie, they sent the Warrens away for the weekend while the investigators could stay behind and try
The
and
Smurls,
capture...
not the Warrens.
I'm sorry. They sent the Smurls away.
No. The Smurls just got fed up with it and they decided to go camping. And they left.
And the phenomenon pursued them.
Yes, it pursued them and it scared them at the campground, and they ended up leaving and coming home. And the whole time they were driving home, there was something banging on the top of their van. And yeah, it was really scary. So they get home, and the worst part is all of their neighbors are standing in front of their house, like mouths agape, as there's just screaming and, lights flashing, and just like, it sounds like something very, very violent is going on inside of their empty home, because the entire family was on this camping trip. There was nobody there. And that scene in the movie is pretty terrifying too, where they pull up and like all the curtains are blowing around and the screaming.
It reminds me a lot of the scene in Poltergeist, where basically it hits the fan and everything starts going crazy, and their teenage daughter comes home, standing in front of the house, looking at the house, watching it flash and with things banging on the inside, and she starts screaming. Classic scene. Anyway, not one I ever want to experience.
No. That's a little over the line for me. I would not like to experience that. So, enough about me. Vince, do you have a story to read to the people?
Actually, yes. And this is a story that is a very short story, but it really captured my attention when I read it. I've been reading through the archives at Castle of Spirits, trying to get to know the website, trying to get to, get the full experience of what this is. There are a lot of stories that have to do with similar topics, hauntings, disembodied voices, things like that. But I stumbled upon a story that the title just leapt right out at me. And afterward, I did an internet search for any kind of similar phenomenon, and I couldn't find anything, but it could be that I just don't know the language to use when searching for it.
Okay.
And the story that I chose is called Waketop Walkers, written by Anonymous in Texas, USA, in October 2016. As a new crew member, part of my duties were to take the trash can up from propulsion and dump it over the side of the ship. The can was so heavy that it took two of us to get it up the ladders from below to the fantail above decks outside. The time was about 11:30 p.m. The location was somewhere between Hawaii and the Philippine Islands in the South Pacific Ocean. As we stepped outside with the can, we closed the hatch doorway quickly to maintain darkened ship. We stood still outside to let our eyes adjust to the dark. We dumped the can, then stepped back from the railing and stood still again. My shipmate was 3 feet from me, but I couldn't see him. As I looked down at the sea going by us below, I saw our wake on the port side where we were standing, just like you would see on a ski boat, the white water wave rolling out away from us. As I looked at the white top of the wake, I followed it out with my eyes to see how far I could watch it. As I was watching the wake, I distinctly saw a bearded white man with black hair and a short beard walking on top of the wake. He had on one of those ruffled long-sleeve shirts from the olden days. He had on dark trousers. He was looking straight ahead, like he was going somewhere by walking on top of the wake. I questioned my own sight and looked beyond the man further to see if my vision might correct itself. Instead, I saw a second man, further out, doing the same thing, walking on top like he was going to wherever it was they were going. I could not make out the second man's clothing. He was shrouded in the darkness of the night, but I could see that he was there, and I was watching his leg movements as he walked. I didn't dare say anything to my shipmate, who had remained totally quiet during this whole time. He may have been watching it too. Finally, my shipmate said that we better go back in. I have not shared this story with anyone until now, and will always remember it like it happened yesterday. And that was Waketop Walkers from Anonymous in Texas, USA, October 2016. Now I ask you, have you ever heard of anything like that before, Jane?
I have not.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Well, no. Mm-mm.
I haven't either.
Mm-mm.
But if anybody out there has or has heard of what this thing is, please send us a message and edify us. Because seriously, I couldn't find anything. I Google searched Waketop Walkers, and the only thing that came up was this story.
Wow.
On all of the interwebs.
There's got to be other stories of similar things.
Well, what would you even call something like that? I mean,
I don't know.
If you say ghost, ocean, if that's what your search, right?
Yeah. You come up with ghost ships and
ghost
things
ships,
like
which is
that.
an awesome topic.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one of the reasons that this story kind of captured my imagination so well is that stories of ghost ships like John Carpenter's The Fog.
I love that movie.
It's just one of my favorite topics there is. And there's something really terrifying about the ocean.
Well, and there's also a romance about it. And
certainly.
It has the other thing that we really like is, kind of that cloistered location where everything is very contained.
Or a very vast location.
Well,
Remember
the
boat movie?
The boat is the real location, right?
Right.
And for something like, ghost ships.
Do you remember the movie Triangle?
Oh, I would never forget the movie Triangle.
Yeah, it's a movie I strongly recommend.
Oh, yeah. Triangle is, yeah. If you haven't seen it before, we'll put it in the attic. So make sure you check out the attic on the website. If you haven't seen the movie before, clearly I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but I'll just tell you what my viewing experience was. The very first time we watched it, 20 minutes or so into the movie, I was kind of like, I don't think this movie's very well made. It seems to have some continuity issues. But shortly, just at the beginning, you might be tempted to say, this movie is stupid and turn it off, but don't. That's all I'll say.
Also, don't base your opinion of the movie on the description that was written for the movie because it's a very...
Yeah.
Some movies just can't be encapsulated properly. This is one of them.
But yeah, the ocean is a terrifying place. And, probably a lot of that is because we know so little about it. I mean, we know about it. Certainly there's a lot that we know about it, but there's a lot that we don't know and that we will probably never know. And so, we talked about this before, Vince, when, looking at cultures in, throughout history who believed, oh, well, this person died and we think they might be a vampire for whatever reasons, so we're going to do these actions. Or, we have these weird beliefs based around things that we don't understand. Well, I think that we have similar things too for the water. This is something that we don't really understand fully. So we've got all kinds of beliefs and mythologies and everything around the ocean.
Didn't I hear that, and check me and see if this is accurate, that we know more about outer space than we know about what's
at the bottom of the ocean? At the bottom
of the ocean, and
yeah.
To the extent of which, the Earth is mostly ocean.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much hyperbole is in that, but yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that said.
But water in general is scary.
It's terrifying.
Especially when you can't see. I remember years and years ago, we were visiting family in Baltimore, and they had they had a house on the bay, a summer house, a vacation house. And I got into one of those little flotation devices. An inner tube, exactly. Thank you. And, I let myself drift, and I was drifting farther and farther away, and eventually decided, okay, this is enough. I'm going to get hit by a speedboat or something. So, I started working my way back slowly. And then I felt something like just pinch my toe.
Yeah.
I probably wasn't more than 30 feet from shore, but I didn't freak out, but I just started suddenly kicking my legs like my life depended on it. Mm-hmm. And of course, after I got out, I said, something grabbed me. And they're like, oh, it was probably just a crab.
Yeah.
But
a crab or a fish? Probably a fish came up on your toe.
Tried to eat me.
Yeah.
Now, after seeing movies growing up, and I don't know, maybe by then I'd already seen this movie, Let's Scare Jessica to Death, a movie that we often refer to here, with the beautiful old house on the lake and something inside the lake that shouldn't be there, that is terrifying. I immediately conjured up images of some creepy ghost woman trying to pull me under.
Yeah, well, I have the same type of thing, and I think it's a pretty common thing. Like I don't want to get into water where I can't see. If I can't see my hand, but just below the surface, no. And if I get in and I can't see my feet, hard pass. And it's not that I'm afraid of sharks or, because clearly we don't have sharks around here, but I don't know what's down there, and I don't want to find out, because when you can't see what's below the water, that's when something grabs your ankle and drags you under. And I'm not having that.
I actually had something like that happen to me later on in life. I mean, echoing back to me in that inner tube, 9 years old on the Chesapeake Bay.
Only this time older in life, it was the bathtub, right?
No, it was not the bathtub, and there was no rubber ducky. I was in bed. You were lying next to me. This took place about 20 years ago. And as happens in life, you grow up and you overcome certain fears, or at least you grow out of them.
Yeah.
One of those fears for me was hanging my foot over the side of the bed.
No, that's a hard pass. No, that's a valid fear. Don't do that.
I don't know exactly why I was doing that. I mean, if maybe we just didn't have, maybe the bed was really small. I don't remember. I don't exactly know why I was hanging my foot over the edge of the bed.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
And what I expected to accomplish. Maybe I was trying to face my fears or something.
Prove to yourself that something wasn't going to reach up and grab your foot.
Right, but then something did. And yeah, do you remember this?
Yeah.
I was lying in bed. We were lying in bed. My foot dangling like a stupid teenager in a horror movie. And I felt something distinctly close around my big toe and give a little gentle tug. So I woke up immediately thinking that it was our dog, who slept on the floor next to the bed. And maybe she was trying to get my attention, or maybe she was having a nightmare and she thought I was food and decided to try and take a bite. But when I sat up, I saw that she was clear on the other side of the bedroom. I'm not sure. Did I wake you up, or did you just wake up?
Probably.
Because I was thrashing around trying to figure out.
I don't know. It was 20 years ago.
What's interesting about that, though, is that in theory, you could, put somebody in that situation and ask them, what would you do if somebody or something grabbed your toe in the middle of the night? And what do you think their answer would be?
Scream and run away, or
leave the house, maybe go stay at a hotel.
Start it on fire.
Well,
burn it all down, Charlie.
That's a little bit too far there, Charlie. But yeah, the natural reaction is
go back to sleep.
To just say, "Oh, okay, I don't know what that was, but I have to get up early, so I'm going to bed."
Well, that's peculiar.
If you guys really need me, try it. Tug at my nostrils or my ears or something next time.
But is it possible that it was some kind of like exploding head syndrome equivalent? Exploding toe syndrome.
Tugging foot syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's a thing. And I can't rule out the possibility that it was a muscular spasm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had muscle spasms.
It feels like somebody comes and places their hand on your back. I've had things like that.
I've had those, and I had one recently, in fact, and I kind of like, you know, turned my head really quick, thinking there was something behind me, and when there was nothing there, I thought, well, I guess it's just my back, which is, maybe it's kind of weird. Maybe somebody out there can tell us if that's...
Well, I think that a lot of people have felt that, you know, just at different instances where it feels like they're being touched, or like somebody, you know, grabs their foot or their hand or touches their hair or whatever. And hey, now I know that a lot of you guys listening have stories like that. So submit them to us in the lounge. Tell us about when a ghost touched you, and maybe we'll read it on a lounge episode coming up soon.
That's about the second story like that I can remember happening to me, because I know in one of the last episodes we talked about another phantom touch that I received. So it could very well be that I have some sort of muscular spasm issue, or maybe the most likely explanation for what happened to me was not that some random spirit reached through from the other side
to grab your toe and
to try and freak me out, but maybe just something as simple as that, you know, physiology. I mean, I hear weird things after I've had spicy food going on in my stomach.
Oh boy.
And you swear, you know, 2,000 years ago, 500 years ago,
there's a man screaming in my stomach. Yeah,
there were little people running around your insides doing horrible things to you. Now we know that's not the case, and maybe one day we'll know. Well, I'm pretty sure that the food we had the other night did not contain small fairy-like creatures.
I hope not.
Although it sure tasted like it.
Or high in carbs. I mean, I guess we could always bust out a Ouija board and ask if somebody grabbed your toe or if it was just all in your head. And the reason that I just railroaded you while you were in the middle of talking is because for episode 10, we are going to do a special themed episode. It's going to be all Ouija board talk.
Oh, no.
Yes. And I want to do these special themed episodes every once in a while. There'll always be a different topic. It's not going to be Ouija boards every time. Ouija boards just this first one. So we will read some stories from the Castle of Spirits archive, because there's a billion Ouija board stories. We want you guys to participate. Go to the lounge and send us your Ouija board stories. You know, that it can be like a quick little one, a little incidental one. Send us your opinion on Ouija boards, how they work, why they work, if they work, whatever. We want it all Ouija board for this one episode, and we want to hear from both sides. We know that a lot of people are of the opinion that Ouija boards are evil and they shouldn't be messed with, and you're free to send us that information too, but give us some meat to it. Don't just say, don't play with Ouija boards, they're evil. Give us your opinion on that. How does it work? Why does it work? What stories have you experienced or someone close to you experienced? We will also be doing some research on our own and presenting a few different viewpoints. And yeah, I hope it'll be a fun episode. We will not be using a Ouija board on air for anybody, you know, concerned about that. Let's just break it down and have a conversation about this.
If I'm not mistaken, we each have a Ouija board of our own to share.
A Ouija
board experience of our own to share.
Mine is not my experience. I actually don't have any notable Ouija board experiences, but yeah, it's somebody else's story. But we'll talk about it then. I'm really excited for this episode. I think it will be a lot of fun. And, you know, you're also free to email us or go to the lounge and tell us what other themed episodes would you like to have. Let's have all of it. So, with that, do head over to castleofspirits.com. Submit us your stories. If you have a story that you want to tell that you want us to potentially read in an episode, submit your story. If you want to join in the conversation with something that we talked about in the episode, or give us some meat and potatoes for a future themed episode, which this next one is Ouija boards, head to the lounge. Give us what you got. We want all of it. And then make sure you check out the attic on the website, because that is where you'll find music, books, movies, things of that nature that we've talked about in episodes that we recommend. Just a good place to get your spooky media on.
Indeed it is.
And so, Vince, if you don't have anything else to say, I think that wraps up this episode of the Castle of Spirits podcast.
Toodaloo.
Really?
Now we have to come up with something to say at the end. We're still working on that. I suggested Toodaloo and you shot it down.
No, Toodaloo is horrible. This isn't like a podcast about kids' toys or something. We just talked about Polly Pockets. Toodaloo.
And I think we tried to come up with our own little catchphrase, stay scared. Didn't seem to catch on.
It didn't really catch on with us.
Didn't really set my world on fire.
How about thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll be back with another episode soon.
Ghostkeepers out.